Alright, welcome back everyone, Mark Session again, and we will start sculpting in ZBrush and using some of the principles in the software and understanding how tools are working and the logic behind the scenes. Okay, so first of all, we have a couple demo projects, and there are some similar names: DynaMesh, Dynasphere. And when you see this, the 1 as a number, so if I'm clicking on it, it will show the full number and the full name as well. So this is DynaMesh Sphere 128, as that's the resolution. So this is a good mid-range resolution. Let me double click on it and open it up, and there we are. If we press Shift F, that is for save frame. Again, polyframe, excuse me. So polyframe, and that's you can check the actual resolution of the model. It's not super dense, but it's fairly decent. What we will create is kind of a goblin, kobold, leprechaun kind of head. We will see what's going on. Basically, the purpose of this practice is to use the move tool and some of the basic brushes, kind of everyday brushes, all right, and how they're working. So Shift F, let me turn this off. What you see here, symmetry is on. This is a project. That means we have some settings coming with it. Madcap gray, and symmetry is turned on. Okay, let me change the size of the brush. And the standard brush is not really suitable to start out a project. Usually we are using a huge brush with the move capability. So B for brushes will bring up this dialog. By the way, it's very much the same as this here. A few things are different, but basically this is kind of a brush inventory. And we have more brushes than this. These are just the kind of a standard brushes, but in Lightbox, let me show this just in a brief moment. So we have a brush section, and we have, just for the noise, we have furthermore 5 noise brushes, while normally if you're just going in here and press brush and N and O, that's the one single noise. Okay, so imagine that many of the brush types have their own adjusted versions in the Lightbox inventory for specific purposes. Alright, so the brush we are using is the B, M, and V brush. That is the move brush. So this is how it works. I'm pressing B, it will open up. M will narrow down our selection, and by pressing V, we are switching to the standard move brush. We have also move topological, move curve, and move infinite. This one is very useful. Alright, but now we're sticking with the standard move. And what I will do is I will check the cam view, rotate it in the sideways, and even turn off perspectivity, and I will just create kind of a head silhouette. Alright, so the back of the head, we're pushing this down a little bit. This is the front. I'm pulling out the chin-like thing. Maybe the forehead is a little bit behind. Let me give this a look. Okay, and of course the front, it's way too wide, so I'm just using this big brush to kind of massage this head to somewhat into a shape. And if I'm looking from the bottom, I will also check it. Now here's something that I'm already using, and that is, if you see, the brush is changing to blue because I'm holding down the shift key. Now during this whole process, I'm holding down the shift key, and that means I'm temporarily switching my brush to a sort of smoothing like brush. Now when I'm releasing, I'm going back to the move brush, and here's what's commonly used. You can use the Alt brush, the Alt function for the move brush. Now what it does, basically, if you're holding down Alt, usually it inverts the add function, and you can push things inside, inwards, if you're using a standard sculpting brush, for example. But when you're using the move, it will become a specific and different approach. You can pull out things surface normal related. Okay, So wherever you touch this, you can pull it in, pull it out according to the surface normal. What a surface normal is, a surface normal is nothing else. Let me show it in small. That when you have a polygon, here we have a polygon. Let me show this. This is a polygon, and I'm using the Alt key. It pushes in or it pulls out according to the surface normal, which one is a perpendicular vector, virtual vector that's placed here. All right, so this is the logic behind it. Let me press F and let me undo a couple of times. Now we only made a few things, but here you may notice that we have some settings. We have a history here. Okay, so ZBrush can save 10,000 history steps for each subtool. Right now we have only one, but it's very, very useful. Let me change the brush size, and I will pull out a nose kind of thing, go to the left view, and because it's like a goblin, let me make this a little bit pointy and ugly, a little mean creature. Yeah, probably the eyebrows should be a little bit lower. Eyes are fairly well protected by the skull, and maybe the widest area is not this. Yeah, we can pull this in a little bit. Okay, just to emphasize the kind of blockiness, the hardness of this face. And here's something that you need to recognize right away. The reason we are using DynaMesh, because we are working on a silhouette, and this little silhouette panel helps us a lot because it will give a nice feedback, and when you are designing a character, it's really a valuable tool. By the way, if you just accidentally press simple V, this is what you get. You can also use this trick. This is the all-time trick. V is for switching the colors. So when you're pressing this and you have no color assigned yet to the model, and we don't have it because we're just starting out, this is how it works. The reason I like to show it, because by accident, I'm sure many of you will press this simple V button and see that something is off, something is changed. Now the reason why we are here is because DynaMesh is a great tool, again, for working on silhouettes, but this is also stretching out, and the more stretch you have, the less even polygon size you have, and this means it will be harder to model and harder to sculpt. So what we can do is we can refresh DynaMesh. Let me show where DynaMesh is. In geometry, we have a section dedicated to DynaMesh. This button is highlighted in yellow. That means this one is really active. So this is the resolution that we adjusted. Now, it's not like the standard mesh. You're not just updating with a couple button sets. When you're updating, if you want to change the resolution, usually you're cranking up higher and higher. This process is not a back and forth process. You're not lowering the resolution, because if you're lowering the resolution, you're losing detail. Usually it is starting out, you have a good silhouette, and then you may increase the resolution 1 or 2 times, and at the end, then you switch to a different mesh editing process, or a different mesh type. Okay, so for now, if we want to recalculate this area, we're holding down Control. This Control is, by the way, it's the same thing that switches to masks. We will use masks soon as well. But holding down Control outside the model, click and drag, and that will force this DynaMesh to, okay, now it's time to recalculate, clearing the mask, recalculate things. Okay, it's something like a clearing mask shadow box voxel refresh. All right, there we are. Now we can move on and add more details. So maybe around this area, I'm pulling in. Yeah, it's pretty wide. Maybe this bridge should be a little bit more articulate. We can also pull up a little bit the eyes and push this in. Push this in to add some edge here, using some smoothing and rotating around. This is far too much in here, and yeah, just make it somewhat believable. Okay, and pushing this in. So again, I'm not using any special thing. I'm not using any sculpting brush. I mean, pull out brushes and pattern type of brushes. This is just a very simple stuff, and a move brush basically. Okay, so nothing else is going on. I'm using smooth time to time and now refreshing, recalculating the model. Let me give it a try to pull this back in to add some cavity. Cavities are pretty important because of the shadows and a few other things. Alright, I'm just looking for the proportion and pulling this out because, yeah, the flesh is coming down on this area, which was good. And definitely we have to pick this, separate this part and make the chin a bit more articulate. Okay, it's not the best and easiest brush for this one, for this purpose, but we will do well. I'm just looking for the shape. Okay, it's pretty fine. Now the chin part is too rounded, so I want to pull out more pointed chin and just working on this. Okay, I think it's believable, right? Okay, now definitely we need to lower this down slightly, and we need a place where we can create ears later on. But right now our biggest task is to start working on the neck. So we need a neck. Now, yes, you can start and pull and grab and do this and refresh, but it's not that easy to do even if you have a big brush. Some folks like to do it that way, but one fast way to do it is holding down Control, and we are using the masking brush now, and the masking brush is behaving differently depending on where your cursor is, and it's very true for ZBrush in many occasions. So when you drag outside, it will create kind of a rectangle, and when you're holding down space, you can move this rectangle and then you can mask. Don't forget that we have symmetry turned on. This is why we have this mask shape. And let me turn this y-axis restrictions. Control drag, it clears the mask, and if I'm control dragging again, it will recalculate the mesh as well because it's DynaMesh. So, but when you are actually hovering over the model area, it will become something like a paintbrush, an airbrush. So this is the area I want to start the neck from. I want to pull this out. Now the masked area is the protected area, so it's a little bit of an invert so many times. So usually you're a mask you want to work with, and then you invert the mask, protect everything else, and now here's the masked area. And we can use the big smooth brush and pull it out. That's also working, but sometimes it just makes it too thin or not as good. Something else is pretty useful. Let me undo this a couple of times. If you just press and use the 3D gizmo. So if you remember from the 2.5D session where we briefly used transformations, W is the hotkey for transform. This is the 3D model, so we have a 3D gizmo coming up. That means we can move, scale, and rotate at the same time with this. We don't have to switch with scale and rotate, so we don't need to use these. The 3D gizmo remains the same. So if you are fully in the side view, there's no perspectivity turned on. You can actually grab these fins, photo fins, or bounding box kind of things, and move it freely. That's what you can do. That's one way. The other way, if you grab the vectors, the coordinates individually and adjust it, this is a little bit more meticulous. And these are for transformations, but if you want to scale, you have to go in and pick this guy. Let me select this, pick this guy too. It's a non-uniform scale, so it's scaling on the y-axis. You can scale on the x-axis, and of course on the z one. The middle is the kind of center type of uniform scaling. So let me drag this, pull this out a little bit. Okay, and just add more. And Okay, I'm happy now. So let me press Q. Q is going back to draw mode, so I'm leaving the gizmo. And what I have to do is, first of all, I want to update this DynaMesh. But if you're not familiar with DynaMesh, there's a tendency that you forget about the masking. So we just used masking, so it's still active. This area is lighter gray. This one's a little bit darker. It takes time for your eyes to recognize these differences, but once you do it a couple of hours, I think it becomes a second nature. So Control Drag is the first thing. It clears the mask, and Control Drag again, and that will update the model. So let me show this. Control Drag, and now we have a nice clean topology that's very dense, and this is designed for sculpting. Okay, it's even, everything is the same resolution, and it's quite a good and controllable stuff. Now here's what you may recognize, that okay, we have updated, so now we have a dense mesh, but still some artifacts are showing up. This is where you may want to go and hold down the Shift key and smooth things to make it better and matching to the existing part. Be careful, because smoothing is, and it can destroy some of the designs that you have made. And whenever you refresh the DynaMesh model, it will change slightly, so it will not give you back the perfect details. This is why DynaMesh is not really good for super detailed stuff. However, you can do things. Sometimes it's necessity to use DynaMesh, but it's technology and situation dependent. All right, let me leave this and work on something else. We need different brushes, but right now what I'm looking for is, I want to perfect the silhouette. Okay, so head shape is there. I think it works pretty nice. Maybe I want to add some volume here in the back, just pulling this, and that may be interesting, probably. Yeah, okay, I like this. Very weird skull. This step, we want to remove that step later on, and maybe some smoothing here and there, pushing this back, make it round. All right, so this is what the best way. If you look around, also look from the bottom. All right, and as you see, I'm using the Shift key to snap into views, and I'm looking for the silhouettes time to time. Okay, now, so what else are interesting in silhouette wise? We definitely want to have ears. Now here's a brush that's kind of an interesting brush. Let me press B, C, and 3. B, C, 3. It takes time to load a little bit. This brush is a VDM brush. V like a vector displacement brush. It stands for, it's a combination of normal maps and displacement. So what it means, if you have a simple, I'll just show you this picture. So if you have this thing, this is an ear, and as you see where it's brighter, it protrudes more. So when you start pulling it out, it's a drag rect type thing. So you place your cursor and start dragging out. This is a right ear. So if I'm starting this on this side, on the left side, I can just make this upside down ear. Which one is, again, it's a viable thing. So if you want to just design, basically what you can do is you can select the BSH snake hook brush and just start pulling here and just create something and refresh, smoothing it out, and there you go. So you can go crazy, but right now we just want to create a standard kind of goblin head. So going back, BC3, and looking for any ear like yeah, like this, and start pulling out on the right side. Okay. Yeah, I like it. Okay, I'm not totally happy with the proportions, but later on I will just work this out. And let me turn off perspectivity and see how it looks without the perspective. Now, here's something that's not entirely unique to ZBrush, that the camera is pretty good if you're watching it from a distance, but when you start moving closer, the camera distortion is just way too much. So to handle this issue, we can open up the divider, turn off the brush, and go to draw mode and drop draw mode here. And draw, we have the camera settings here. And this is my 50mm focal distance, which one is good, but it's not that good for close-up shots and close-up work. So I like to use the 85, or if I have smaller object, I may even use a little bit higher. Okay, so that's it. The camera now is set, so it's a lot less fisheye or distorted. It's much more even if you zoom in and out, which one is again helping with the design. So before we are moving on, we want to clear up the ear and control drag and look for the clean version, and then to remove these little resolution issues, I'm using the shift key and carefully, not with too much strength, just removing that. Okay, nice. Now what else? What to do next? How to add details. These brushes, the move brush is great, but we are done with the silhouettes. We can use the move brush, but it's not really beneficial at this stage. We definitely need furthermore brushes. But before I do that, I want to create my upper lip here, and doing that with masking, just to show another example how to use mask. So I'm masking out this area. This is what I want to protect, and I'm using the move brush, BMV, and pull this top area out. Okay, so that way I'm creating this lip part. Now to control and tap and rotate, invert the mask can help, and I can just work on this chin a little bit because this articulation needs some more attention. Alright, there we go. Now when you're masking things, you can add to your mask and you can remove from your mask. Just let me show you a quick example. I want to create maybe a cavity here, so I'm holding down Control, start the mask, and if the cavity is not rounded, I can add to it, but just by using the Control. But if I want to remove, Alt is usually again inverting, it's removing from many cases. So when you're holding Control and Alt and going back, it removes from your existing mask. Okay, so it's often used if you want to, for example, a sharp corner with your masking, and you mask your patch bigger, and then using Alt key and remove, and now you have a somewhat more sharp area, which one is hard to create if you have a large brush. Okay, so let me just remove from here, invert the mask, and use the BME. We already have the move brush. Let me pull this in and just create this ear cavity, and control drag, and just smooth out things. Okay, so this is just a simple cavity. Okay, just to think on the shadows. All right, I definitely want to fill up this area, and I definitely want to add some wrinkles, and of course add eyes and other things. Now what? One of the best build-up brush is the BCT. That's clay tubes, and BCB brushes. So clay tubes, this is how it works. You have just nice layout. It's very lifelike. So if you have ever worked with real wax, it's somewhat the same with the layers, and it's a great way to do things. The other variation, what I like to use, is the BCB clay buildup brush. that the benefit of using the clay brushes, they're excellent to filling up gaps like this. All right, so please take a look at here. If we have some imperfections, we want to match some areas, this is a great thing. Now, smoothing, again, we should be careful with smoothing. Let me first clean this up by using Alt key and shaving, scraping off things. And this brush is not just a good brush for working, but it's also nice for creating textures. Okay, so it has its own texture. We don't want to use smoothing all the time, so that can add a nice feel to it. The more resolution you have, usually the texture is nicer, but right now, because we are just using DynaMesh, it is less intense. Okay, so I will fill up this area as well, moving in, adding to the back, and also filling here. And I'm looking for the silhouette, looking for how it works. All right, maybe from the front. Yes, from the front, definitely want to add more to create the illusion of having a broad shoulder with this figure. And filling this up. Now here's something that's a common thing for sculpting. Use as large brush as you can to stick with the primary values, volumes, and don't lose yourself into small details. Okay, so you may recognize that we have a standard brush, a sculpting brush, and when we are using control, it switches to masking. When we are using the shift key, it switches to smoothing. But we have another function too when you are using control and shift in combination. So let me turn off perspectivity. Holding control and shift. And this is the select brush. Now, selection brush, we have more than just selection. Selection brushes include this knife cutting type of brushes. So you can cut, split, punch holes with your models. Now with DynaMesh, these are working pretty well, so I will use the knife curve. So I'm holding down Control and Shift, and because I'm holding down Control and Shift, the specific brushes that are available as select brushes will appear. If I'm doing this, it will bring everything. Okay, so it's not filtering my selection. So this is why it's good to remember that holding down Control and Shift, then you can move in here. And of course we have hotkeys for this, but these brushes are, if you use them frequently, you can actually create a custom sheet for these. But right now, let me just go in here and explain what this does. So I'm starting and dragging this out. This is a cutting plane. The cutting plane has two sides. If you see that shadow area on the bottom of the edge running along, that shadow means that part will be lost. Okay, so we have now, this is cut down. I think it's a bit high, so I will just start over and do it again. Control and Shift and start. Now here's what you need to know. When you're holding down the space bar, you can actually reposition this stuff. Right, you can move it freely. Now, time to time, this is what happens. If you start from the wrong direction and the shadowy area is on the top, this is what you will see. And of course, you want to keep the head. So Control and Shift, and you recognize that, okay, something is off. You can start over, or you can just hold Shift, move this away, space bar, sorry, move this away and move around with your brush and then just do this. Okay, so it's a little bit of a weird movement, but you can use this and it helps a lot. Okay, let me let it go and take a look at the structure. Take a look at DynaMesh. So let me press Shift F and see what's going on. Can you see the colors? Okay, I will turn off the line and now the colors are there. So this is a different color than this. And the brush can do it for you. So knife curve brush will actually, at the cutting plane, it will show a different polygon group. It will automatically update polygon group. So let me control drag and DynaMesh is keeping this polygon group. All right, that's a good thing to have. Okay, so that is about cutting. Perspective is going back. Every time when you cut or masking precisely, best advice, turn off perspectivity. Go to a side view, front view, or depending on the task, but mainly without perspective. Okay, so what else? Shift F, turning back on. I will get back the lines, so I definitely want to see the frame of the wireframes. And what else? One brush is really useful, not just for details, but also for design in the early stages. And this is the old forever favorite BDS Damien standard. So brush D, B, D, Damien S standard. Okay, so this is one of the favorite. And you can create some sketches that help you out. I will make it a little bit more happy. Okay, I like the happy faces, so that's good. And cut this off here, adding some wrinkles, and maybe a little wrinkle here, because he's a good guy and a happy one. I will just add these positive, typical crow feet wrinkles around. Okay, that's good. What else? Separating the ear, for example. Earlobe. Cutting it away. Control drag, refreshing slightly. And if you're holding down Alt key, you can actually elevate. So that's also a great little feature. Not everybody's using this, but I like to use the Alt key with the Damien brush and just pull out things time to time. Okay, here just dropping in, and definitely we need to have the wrinkle that's coming on here, and we need a corner of the eye. So I'm just drawing out, designing some details, and this below the eye. Great. Usually we have a kind of a ridge here, and maybe a cut in here. Okay, right. So we are getting closer. We are getting closer. And Damien is a nice brush to be used. Here, usually there's also a little bit of a cavity. And here we have the tragus and the anti-tragus. And this area, let me switch to move brush because this is too far up. So I don't want to make it a human ear, but it's too far up. So let me just bring it back. Imagine that you want to put on a glass on a figure, like eyeglasses, then it's definitely too much. Maybe the height should be adjusted as well. All right, perfect. Okay, what else? I think the face part is a little bit big compared to the rest of the head. We can play some games with it. I will use the BFA flatten brush to clean this up. It's not smoothing, and it's not really scraping. The flatten brush is just creating a flat surface. It's like using a simple knife and just make it flat in some areas, but it's great for cleaning up a shape. As you see, it gives some order and some reliable structure. Okay, so what else we want to do? Here's something that's very useful and interesting. So as I mentioned earlier, we have different type of move brushes. So the brush hotkey for B move, M because it's a move brush, and this is one of the favorites. This is the move elastic. Now what this does is when you move this, it moves with kind of a different fall off. So you can really create some nice dynamic changes and it's great for design, few things here and there. And okay, let me just go in with this. All right, so in a few seconds you can really boost something and tinker around. Digital sculpting as an art, it's also experimenting and also letting go your thoughts and have a kind of a creative process. All right, this one looks great. Now this is a little bit boring, so let me just add some kind of Yoda-ish. It's too much, but what I have here with the nose, maybe a little bit of a change here can spice things up. And I'm looking for the silhouette. All right, yeah, the silhouette is strong. Okay, and add some imperfection like that. Okay, it's hard to explain what this thing is. So, yeah, I like this. Okay, and definitely want to cut here. Maybe move this a little bit out. Good, and BDS, Debian Standard, and a little bit of a cut to separate. Okay, usually there is some fatty area, so here we can use even the BST, the Beast standard brush, to add some volumes here, and also add some volumes here. Good, because we are smiling so much. Here, some volumes. And control drag and refresh the model. All right, so adding it up, smoothing. Yeah, definitely. And here we have some compression wrinkles, because he is smiling quite a lot, and there's his throat. Here, maybe these are just the flesh, the skin is a little bit more pushed, so there's more density. We need more wrinkles here, so BDS. And again, DynaMesh is not really suitable for creating wrinkles. It's not, but we are just blocking out the base volumes here. Okay, BCT, clay, and filling this up. This is another form. Can you see? So these two forms are compressed and pressed to each other. So I want to make that a little bit more fatty area at the bottom. Look at here. Okay, and despite this is fairly muscular as a figure, it has some strength. All right, just pushing in. Okay. Right, he's really happy, which was absolutely fine with me. Okay, there's no eyeballs yet, so it's time to somehow try to put it in. But before we do that, let me show you something about the ears, because it's very commonly happening with DynaMesh. So when you're a beginner and start working with DynaMesh, you will experience that some areas are thinner than usual, and some brushes tend to destroy this. And if these very thin areas are just becoming overly thin, DynaMesh will actually create holes in it. It will create chippings. Let me show this. So the BCB clay tubes brush, if I'm using this and start creating more cavities here, as I'm going and moving along with this, I will reach a point where this area will become very, very thin. And when I'm control refreshing, you can see now this hole is going there. So be careful with that. So when you're using DynaMesh, you can make it thin, but not overly thin. And time to time, when you are refreshing this, please pay attention and check these specific areas for error. So ears or around hands and other things. The other problem with that is when you have a larger clay type of brush, for example here, it's not just affecting the front side, it is also affecting the back facing polygons, those polygons that are not even visible for you, but the brush includes them in the sampling. So this was not turned on by default. We have the brush settings, so let me just close the draw. We don't need that, but we need the brush settings, so let me drop it here and open up auto masking, and this wonderful backface mask can help us to avoid that issue. Alright, so don't forget, especially when you're using DynaMesh and you're using clay brushes, backface mask is a very good stuff to use. Alright, let me just turn off the divider. Backface mask is on, and I don't really want this to be present, but right now I can work on the ears as well. So I will just add some volumes in here, maybe a little bit of an intensity going on. And BCB is a little bit harder, so clay tubes is not as aggressive. Clay buildup is way more aggressive, so I can add more to it, more internal details to the ear, because it is just way too flat. Another thing, typically we have more meaty areas around the edge, so that is what I want to add here, just to make it more humanoid like. This is the okay, that's great. And BMV and moving it away, so just having this. All right, so you see the logic. It's not special in any tricks. The more you do it, the better you will be. But it's too much, so let me undo. This is why it's so beneficial to have that many undos. But I definitely want to add another gap here, just to separate the shape. So this is the outer shape that's coming down, and then this one is separated, and BMV, and this was pulled back in a bit up, and this was pulled a little bit more. So now there's some split in here. Great. Okay, and often we have some negative inside, especially if there's earrings, or the ear itself is heavy and there's some elongation, which was great. But if it is heavy, it should be really closer to the body. So if it's standing out too much, I can't believe it's heavy and soft. But if it's falling standard, then it's much more easier to recognize that, okay, this should be heavy and soft. Alright, great. So we know about clay brushes, some useful tips about clay brushes. We have used the move brush. What else we can do? A few things. For example, here we have these two shapes, and as you see, my best effort, I try to push them close, like they are, one is pushing the other material physically, but they are separated. They're not really integrated. There's no interaction between these two shapes. There's just a gash in here. So to do that, I like to use the BIN inflate brush to inflate a model. And when you're inflating on both ends, it will push things together, and it will create this nice and strong push. Okay, I'm exaggerating this. This is way too much, but there we are. Okay, actually, it's fairly believable. Let me do this here as well. So I'm adding on. Maybe here, 2. Yep. Okay, adding on here. Okay, right. There we go. There we go. Now these are, we definitely need to separate these here and there, and explain what shape is going where. So this is why I'm using the Debian standard to kind of create these nice transitions and separation between. This is the eye area, it's separated. A light is showing up on here. This area is a little bit more in the shadows. It generates more shadow. It also adds more dynamics to it. Dynamics is usually gives the illusion of more force. So this one is a relaxed phase. I mean, it's mood-wise, but it's very capable to change. Okay, so what else? Maybe here we need another separation, and use the bin to add some volume. There we go, and now we have this. Okay, so the chin and this. It became a little bit fatty, but I like it. Okay. Now, what about the eyeballs? So when you have this model, this is a single subtool. How to insert other things. So this is what's unique in ZBrush. Usually you can go out. Now we have a workbench and we're working on his head, but we can switch to another model and going back and forth. So I'm going back on this and I'm working this one. I'm creating nails, horns, teeth, whatever. And whenever I'm ready, I can go back and I can insert the other model. Now, what I want to insert now is a default sphere. So insert here. I'm just going in here and insert and go to sphere 3D. So this is what we have. W to start moving the thing around. And in ZBrush, most of the things are happening on the right side. That means mirror is happening from right to left. So this area, right side of the figure. Okay, it's not the director's right side. It's not the maker's right side. It's the figure's right side. Okay, we'll definitely want to make it a little bit smaller. All right, and just pushing this in. I think it's fair enough. Okay, maybe change the size, how that looks. Switching to Q. Oh, okay, that's decent. So if we want to paint on this, we can use a paintbrush, but right now I'm not really want to go into that type of details, so I'm just using the BMV move brush and using Alt key and just push this in slightly to simply have some shadow and highlights here and there. And if we are satisfied, we can actually go to Z plugin and mirror it. Now, if you don't have plans or if it's not that complex, you can always go to subtool geometry and modify topology and mirror and weld. So this is one option. If you want to, for example, one side is off and you want to make sure that your head is perfectly symmetrical again. And you can use this also for creating the other eye. But if you have a little bit more complex stuff, it's the best and easiest way of using the subtool master and mirror, and it will mirror left to right. That's x-axis by default, and it will merge into one subtool. If you choose this new subtool, that will create two eyes, but at this stage we don't worry about that because we don't really pose that. Okay, so perspective is on. Let me turn off the Shift P, the floor, and Shift R will create a render. So I just want to see a few shadows. I like the shadows, they're appearing, and like the mood of this guy. Okay, and this is the moment where you have a good foundational mesh, for example, a 3D printed figure, and you want to go and adding further details. But then you have to really mesh the figure and working on that. That's the next topic in the line, not the very next one, but it's an upcoming topic for today. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I hope you enjoyed, and happy sculpting. See you next time. Goodbye.